the first section today in our topics is writing an equation. And this is something that we will elaborate on more so in Chapter 5, maybe a little bit more in Chapter 4, once we get into some different notation. And in fact, I think it's going to get easier because at this point in the game we have to look at kind of a guess and check type method, but later on we're going to get into a little bit more specific way to find how to write an equation. But anyway, let's suppose we have a babysitter who charges $5 per hour. So we can put this into a table and say H or X, doesn't matter. The input is how many hours are worked, and then the correlation would be, or the output would be the amount of money earned, or Y. So if we did this in a Y to X notation, we could write Y equals 5 times X. Meaning if you work, let's say 3 hours, if you put 3 in for X, you do 5 times 3 hours, and you get $15 for Y. And that's like I said, a pretty simple equation to figure out. But in order to check that out, if it wasn't in words, and let's say they just gave you a table, you'd want to look at, okay, well, how do I get from X to Y? And you'd want to do that for each part of the table. So you might think, okay, well, it could be, if I look at the first section, 1 plus 4 gets me to 5. However, 2 plus 4 does not get me to 10. So that would not work. You have to figure out a rule that's going to work for each part of your table. So for instance, if we look at this example, so determine a relationship between X and Y. So you want to look at kind of your first pair, or coordinate, and you want to look at, okay, well, how could I get from 1 to negative 2? So I could look at, well, maybe it's 1 times negative 2. Or here, we'll do it like that, 1 times negative 2. However, if I go to the next section, 2 times negative 2 does not get me to negative 1, so that is not going to be it. So we have to go back to the beginning and check a different option. So maybe it's 1 minus 3, because 1 minus 3 gives me negative 2. Alright, so that works for that one. How about 2 minus 3? Well, 2 minus 3 does give me negative 1. Let's see if it works for the next one. 3 minus 3, yes. And 4 minus 3 gives me 1. So our rule to get from X to Y, so we could write Y equals X minus 3, and this would be our equation. So we'll have some fairly easy relationships to work with in this section. Like I said, it's a little bit of guess and check at this point, but coming up soon we'll get to a little bit more specific way to figure out what your equation looks like. So that is writing an equation.